1.1.5 can convert a worded description into an algebraic expression. This is some of the harder questions where you have to take a worded description and try to translate it into some algebra. Brian buys a bag containing X Smarties, an X number of Smarties. If he divides them equally among N people, how many does each person receive? When you're doing these sorts of questions, it is worth defining what the variables are. So what does that mean? Usually, I would say something like X equals the number of Smarties, and N is the number of people. If he divides them equally among N people, so divide somewhere in our expression is going to have a division symbol. So A, it would be the Smarties divided by the number of people, or which would be X divided by N, or X over N. So that's how much each person would get. They would get the total number of Smarties divided by however many people there are. For B, if he keeps half the Smarties for himself and then divides the remaining Smarties equally among N people, how many does each person receive? So if he keeps half of the Smarties for himself. So let's start with this first one here. So in the first part of this scenario, he's taken away half of the Smarties. So he's taken the full number of Smarties, which is an X number of Smarties. He's taking away half of them. So that would be X over 2. Or you could write it as X take away half of the Smarties, like so. Like that. You could also write it as the original number take away 0.5 of those Smarties. Either way, you could write it either one of those things to start off that particular expression, whichever one works for you. Then he divides the remaining Smarties equally among N people. How many does each person receive? So this writing in red, that tells me how many is left over that he's going to then divide. So he then divides the remaining Smarties among N people. So he takes these Smarties, that he's taken away half of them, and he's going to divide them by an N number of people. You could write it like this. So all I've done there is just done some division by fractions. Alternatively, if we actually have a look at the original question, another way you could approach this is that if he keeps half of the Smarties, how many Smarties are left? Well, if I had one lot of Smarties, take away half of them, that would mean that the ones that are left over there'd be half a lot of Smarties left over. So if he had to divide that amongst N people, again, that would just be X over 2N. Now, how did I get that? I've just done half the Smarties divided by N, which, if I know my fractions, is how I got that X over 2N.